Hey guys, it's Danny and welcome to session 1 of our 10-week intuitive eating series. I could not be more excited to be doing with you guys and I'm so happy that you're here. Just as a reminder, the 10 principles that will be guiding us through this series, I am taking directly from the Intuitive Eating book, and I'll also be using some tools and some exercises from the Intuitive Eating workbook as well. So if you want to take the deep dive, if you want to do this work in between the videos, I do recommend getting those books, not necessary, but helpful. So I will leave the links down in the description box below for any of you who are interested. Now, I do recommend that you have a notebook, maybe a little journal, take some notes as we go through the next 10 weeks. Come back, listen to the video as many times as you need to, and by all means, come down to the comment section below and share your thoughts, your questions, your experiences, your homework assignments, your aha moments, so that we can all support one another and encourage each other along the journey. And if you know anybody who is struggling with their health, with their food, with their body image, with dieting, please do me a favor and share this series with them so we can help spread the good word and get as many people as possible on their path to food freedom and body love. So why this 10-week series? Many of you may be wondering why I decided to do this. Well, if you've been watching for a while, then you may know that I am an ex-chronic dieter and I struggled with my food and my body image for many, many years. And I attempted every diet under the sun in an attempt to lose weight, change my body composition, and get healthy. And honestly, it wasn't until I gave up dieting that I was able to actually start to feel good in my body and reach some of the goals that I had for myself. And giving up dieting kind of happened on accident for me. It happened when I was pregnant with my daughter for the very first time. And when I think back to it, the reason I was able to stop dieting was because for the very first time in my life, instead of being concerned with how I looked, I decided that I wanted to take care of my body. Like I really wanted to know how to nourish this baby that was growing inside of my body. So it was the first time in my life I ever felt like I had permission to be in the body I was in, because when you're pregnant, you don't have to be a certain size and a certain weight. You're allowed to get fuller and bigger. So when I stopped struggling with the need to change how I looked, I was able then to pay attention to myself and my body and begin to create a nourishing relationship. And that's where the shift all started to happen for me. But with that being said, I do want to note that it's definitely still a daily practice to this day. It's not an overnight fix. It's not something you do once and then you're done with it, right? But a big part of finding that place of peace with food and my body for me was learning to eat intuitively. And my definition of intuitive eating is when you take the cues and the signals from your body as the information you need to decide what to eat, when to eat, and how to eat, which is the polar opposite of dieting, right? When we are dieting, we are looking for external cues, external information, external, what time is it? What time of day is it? What the latest diet books say? And then we are trying to stick to somebody else's idea of what healthy eating is. So intuitive eating is an invitation to connect to your inner wisdom, your knowing, and your intuition, where dieting is the ultimate invitation to disconnect. As one of my favorite mentors always says, Mark David, he always says that many of us are on a high fat diet. And what he means by that is that we are consuming so much information about what we should be eating, how we should be eating, when we should be eating, the right foods, the wrong foods, that we're so stuck in our head. We have so many facts that we literally fall out of trust with knowing what our bodies need and what our bodies want, right? So what I want most for you throughout this course, because I know that for many people, weight loss is a goal and why weight loss can be a byproduct. I want you to shift that idea to my number one intention is to create a kind and nourishing relationship with food and body and ultimately with self. I want you to be able to rebuild trust with your body so that you can use that as your guidance system to what and when you want to be eating. As it's said in the book, intuitive eating is not something that you can pass or fail. You don't do it right or wrong, right? It's a learning experience. It's a continuum. And step one to this whole process is cultivating self-compassion for yourself, right? Being kind and easy and understanding and forgiving and curious is absolutely the very first step in creating any type of change, right? So many of us want to bully ourselves and push ourselves into changing something in our lives. And if you are not already coming from a place of kindness, I promise you that is continuously going to be step one. So notice your tone, notice your thoughts, notice the way you conversate with yourself. And if you're not speaking in a tone that you would speak to your best friend or your daughter in, I want you to begin to practice shifting that languaging. There's no doing this perfectly. You know what? Sometimes you're going to eat when you're not hungry. Sometimes you're going to eat emotionally. Sometimes you're going to eat past full, right? These are all parts of being in relationship with food. So give up the idea that there's a right and a wrong way to do it, and allow yourself to stay open to the process, open and easy and kind and loving and compassionate. So the very first principle in the Intuitive Eating book, which actually starts in chapter 5, is to reject the diet mentality. Now, the diet mentality is simply a way of thinking. It's an all or nothing approach to health and weight loss. It tends to be very harsh, very critical, and very needy. Now, a diet mentality is a very all or nothing approach to healthy eating and or to weight loss. And it tends to be very harsh and it's very critical. It's a false hope that's sold to us by the diet industries that losing weight quickly and easily will make you happy, fulfilled, and valuable. And as long as we continue to attach ourselves to this broken system, we spend all of our time and our energy trying to shrink our bodies, which also shrinks our sense of self and ultimately shrinks your entire world. Rejecting the diet mentality has to start with recognizing diet culture, because we are all completely steeped in diet culture. So this all starts with education. The diet culture wants to tell us what our body should look like, what our body should weigh, and that the most important thing that we have going on is how we look, right? And the promise is that if we could just reach that goal weight or reach that body composition, then we will be happy, fulfilled, and valuable. And as long as the diet culture has us believing this, then their industry continues to thrive, because you know what? They've got the product that's going to fix us, and they've got the product that's going to make us feel better, right? But here's the catch. They are selling us a faulty product, because diets never, ever work. Between 96 and 98% of people who lose weight on diets gain that weight back in less than 1 year, and then attempting to continue to diet after that becomes harder and harder and harder. And for that small percentage of people who do maintain the weight, very often we now engage in disordered eating behaviors, right? So while you may use a diet and actually be able to keep the weight off, we are constantly obsessed with thinking about what we're eating, how much we're eating, when we're eating again, who are we eating in front of, how much are we weighing, did we gain weight, did we lose weight, etc., etc. So it's a very complicated topic, in my humble opinion, because we put so much value on weight in this culture that it becomes confusing, right? Like you automatically think that a certain weight and a certain number equals more value, right? But that message is a part of a diet culture, and I want you and I to begin to create separation between that story and the truth. Whenever you approach health or weight loss by restricting food or depriving yourself of pleasure, the body automatically goes into what's called a starvation mode. Basically, the body is reserving what it has because it doesn't know what's coming and when it's coming next, right? So if you're giving your body very few calories and you're holding back and you're holding back, your body's like, hey, we have to protect you, right? Because your body's crazy, insanely smart and wise. So the body's like, we are going to level down a bit so we can make do with what we have. So what that means is it will utilize less calories and it will need less energy to survive. And so what happens is, inevitably, the moment you can no longer white knuckle your way to stay on this diet that the body is hardwired to reject, then you start eating food again, and now the body is like, hey, we'll just store all that as fat because we've learned to survive on this much food, and now you're giving us this much food, right? So it really is this broken system that doesn't work, number one, and number two, it gets harder and harder and harder the more you attempt to diet. We cannot get away from the fact that our bodies are so insanely smart and that they know exactly what to do and how to do it, and they really always have our own back. And so this whole process is a practice of getting back on board with our body and putting as much trust in our bodies as our bodies put into us. So dieting becomes this vicious cycle that is ultimately hardwired to fail. I like to think of it as like a pendulum, right? So if you have a pendulum and it's swinging in one direction, restrict, restrict, deprive, 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 eventually it's going to swing back in the opposite direction with equal and opposite force, right? So we can only get away with that type of behavior for so long, and then it all starts over again, right? That's like the dieter's dilemma. That is the vicious cycle, right? Feel fat, want to lose weight, start to restrict and deprive, ultimately get some cravings, ultimately give in and binge eat, overeat, starts all over again. The dieting industry wants us to believe that we are the failure, right? But you are not a failure. I am not a failure. This is not a conversation about morality, discipline, or self-worth. This is a conversation about a faulty system that bombards us from every angle at all times. Diets are hardwired to fail, and yet we still blame ourselves. So I want you to begin to recognize diet culture and the diet industry so you can begin to also say, no, thank you. Some negative side effects of dieting include slower metabolism, increased desire to binge eat, preoccupation, obsession with food, feelings of deprivation, sense of failure, decreased sense of willpower, and risk of developing an eating disorder. As a matter of fact, 1 in 4 people who diet will end up with some type of eating disorder. I've heard it said that dieting is the gateway drug for an eating disorder. So the very first principle is rooted in giving up any attachment to this very toxic diet culture. And as an ex-chronic dieter myself, I know firsthand that the idea of walking away from dieting can actually feel very uncomfortable, even a little bit scary, right? Because while they don't work, it becomes something that we're very used to, right? It's comforting, it is safe, it feels familiar, and a little bit our identities can get wrapped up with the dieting. So just know that that's totally normal, and it might even feel a little bit scary to let go of. In the book, they list some common fears of letting go of diets, and they include the fear, number 1, if I stop dieting, I'm gonna eat all the food. Reality, dieting is a trigger to overeating. Fear number 2, I don't know how to eat if I'm not on a diet. The reality, practicing getting in touch with our inner signals. Number 3, fear, and I hear this one a lot, I'm gonna be totally out of control, right? The truth, there is nothing to control in the first place. When you practice listening to your body, it will guide you to a healthier relationship with food, and it will bring you into the body size and shape that you are meant to be in. We are not all supposed to look the same. We are not all supposed to have the same type of body. Most bodies do not look like the bodies that you see on the cover of a magazine, right? We don't all have the same size hands. We don't all have the same size feet. We don't all have the same shaped bodies. One of my favorite exercises, if you're ever in a gym or if you're in like a spa or getting a massage somewhere and you're in the locker room, just look at the different people walking around. Just notice the bodies. Or at the beach, how often do you see a body that looks like the cover of a magazine? It is not very often. And it's also important to note that you can be healthy and fit in any size or shape body, right? There are plenty of people who have bigger bodies who are super fit and healthy, and there are plenty of people who have very small bodies who are not fit or healthy at all. So don't think that it all comes down to how a body looks. It comes down to how the body feels. What I have found is that dieting really ends up becoming a way of thinking. It's very rigid, it's very all or nothing, it is not forgiving, it's harsh, it's critical, and it doesn't leave a lot of flexibility for the natural ebb and flow of life. And the only way to really stop that cycle that we do, the dieter's cycle, right, is to stop dieting, which I also think can be, interestingly, socially a little bit awkward as well, right? Because so many people are immersed in this diet culture that it just becomes so normal to talk about food and to talk about body, to talk about weight. It's like a big part of the conversation. So when you choose, hey, I'm not going to do that anymore, you may notice yourself in social situations feeling a little bit awkward because these conversations do happen and they happen often, right? So do know that while you are healing this relationship for yourself, you have permission to create space from anything or anyone that you need to. So I'm going to give you 3 steps to rejecting the diet mentality along with a little bit of homework should you choose to do it. Step 1, cultivate self-compassion, understanding, ease, forgiveness, and curiosity. This is not a process that you bully yourself into. This is a willingness to see the bigger picture and to separate yourself from all of the information that you've been fed so that you can create your own thoughts, your own ideas, and your own opinions about how you want to move forward on this journey. Notice the internal conversation that you have with yourself. Are you being kind and easy and understanding, or are you being judgy and harsh and critical? What tone do you use with yourself? Start to notice, right? Just because you think something doesn't mean you have to agree with it. Write it down and journal it out for yourself. Step number 2, I want you to evaluate your history with dieting, right? How old were you when you started dieting? Where did you learn that you should be dieting? Did anybody in your world diet? Did anybody demonstrate it to you, right? What diets did you try? Which diets worked? Which ones were easy? Which ones were hard? How did they affect you? Were any of them sustainable? How did they affect your inner world and your sense of being? Really think about it. Think about how dieting has affected you over the years. And then ask yourself, am I truly willing to walk away from this? Am I willing to break up with dieting, right? Why or why not? What about it is intriguing to you, and what about it are you afraid of? Write it all out. And then step number 3, I really want you to detox your environment. Anything that is in your peripheral, anything that is in your world that encourages you to cut back on calories, count your calories, restrict your food, deprive yourself of pleasure, make your body smaller, anything that compromises your self of being and your self of value and worth, I want you to detox of it. I want you to get rid of it. So I really want you to evaluate, right? What books are in your house? What magazines are in your house? What shows are you watching? What accounts are you following on social media, right? Anything that triggers you or speaks this language to you, I want you to begin to notice the conversation and to say, no, thank you. I'm not participating in this anymore. And along with that, start to seek out things that support what you want to be developing in yourself, right? So health at every size, positive body image movements, eating for wellness, feeling good, play, pleasure, anything that is supporting the new relationship that you are creating for yourself, start to bring that in. So you literally create an environment for yourself that is lifting you up and not tearing you down. Give yourself permission to broaden your horizons. So that, my friends, is principle number 1. This is video number 1 in the 10-week intuitive eating series that we're going to be doing together. And this week was all about rejecting the diet mentality. I hope that this video was helpful to you. I know it's like soul food for me. I could talk about it all day long. So I am super interested to know what you thought of this information. I would love to hear thoughts, ideas, questions, comments, aha moments. See your homework assignments down in the comments below. I really want to encourage you guys to support one another. Let's build a community where we start a different conversation, okay? Thank you guys so much for watching. I can't wait to meet you back here next week on Tuesday, same place, same time-ish, with some more food for thought. Have a great day, guys. See you soon. Cheers.